By the way, I am Ma'am Nel Pauline Mondigo. So for today's video, we'll determine what is geometry, when it can be applied, and the importance of it in the field of mathematics. For today's video, I invited 3 persons that can answer my question. These are Mr. Jomar J. Valupinius, Mr. Jonesville S. Paterno, and Mr. Rance Raymond Rio. Okay, Mr. Valupinius, here's the question for you. What is geometry?
Good morning, Ma'am Nel. For the question, what is geometry? It is a branch of mathematics that studies the sizes, shapes, position angles, and dimensions of things. We cannot be defined geometry without these 3. First is perimeter. A perimeter is a closed path that encompasses, surrounds, or outlines either a 2-dimensional shape or a 1-dimensional length. Second is area. The area is the amount of space within the perimeter of a 2D shape. It is measured in square units such as centimeter squared, meter squared, etc. Perimeter and area is applicable to 2D shapes like square, triangle, rectangle, trapezoid, rhombus, circles, and many more. Third is volume. Volume is the measurement of amount of space occupied inside the 3-dimensional space. It can be measure of any solid objects like cube, rectangular prism, cylinder, sphere, pyramid, etc. Volume of an object is usually measured using cubic units. And these are the 8 major branches of geometry: Euclidean geometry, analytic geometry, projective geometry, differential geometry, non-Euclidean geometry, topology, ancient geometry, the practical and empirical.
Oh, I see. Thank you, Mr. Jomar. Now, we know what is the definition of geometry. For the second question, it will be answered by Mr. Jones Paterno. So, Mr. Jones, the question is, when geometry can be applied in real life, or is it applicable in our life? That's why we are learning about it.
Thank you, Ma'am Pauline. To answer your first question, we are already applying geometry in our daily lives every day. The most common perspective to the question, when can we apply geometry, is by creating something that a product of geometry such as engineering, robotics, structures, and etc. But not all the time it is full of calculations. Not all the time we need formula to create something about geometry. There are examples of geometry that being produced naturally from our Almighty. Look at the beautiful mountains, trees, waterfalls, rivers, and everything that you can see in our nature. That is geometry. Sometimes we don't need calculations to prove it is geometry. Shape itself is already a geometry. The space in it is a geometry. We live in a place that full of geometric figures and the product of geometric calculations. To address your second question, Ma'am Pauline, my answer is yes. That's why we are learning about it, because we have it. We need to understand what's around us to make use of it. Sadly, the geometric figures from above is making worse day by day because of the actions of humanity. We replace beautiful and peaceful geometry by hot and polluted effects of geometry made by humanity.
Well, I agree to that. The same as what Mr. Paterno said, geometry is really indeed very applicable to real life. So be given to Mr. Rio. How important is geometry in the fields of mathematics?
So thank you for that wonderful question, Ma'am Pauline. So why geometry is important in the field of mathematics? So for me, geometry is very important in the field of mathematics because it is the branch of mathematics concerned with the study of points, lines, shapes, and space. Because the world is made up of various shapes and spaces, geometry is important. It is divided into two categories, which is a plane geometry and a solid geometry. So for the plane geometry, it is consists of two dimension, such as it is a flat shape, such as lines, circles, and triangles, and etc. And for a solid geometry, it is three dimension, uh, which includes solid shapes such as spheres and cubes. So geometry aids in the comprehension of spatial relationships. It studies the size and shapes of everything in the world to produce a clear perception of space and position. So geometry aids in the understanding of the dimension and connections of lines, angles, surfaces, and solids encountered in our daily life. And at a basic level, geometry is important to learn because it creates a foundation for more advanced mathematical learning. Algebra and geometry often uh, overlap overlap points. It introduces important formula such as the Pythagorean theorem used across science and math classes. So this is why geometry is very important in the field of mathematics. And that is my answer for the question, Ma'am Pauline. Thank you.
Yes, personally, I learned something from that. So thank you for your answer, Mr. Rance. By the way, I have another questions that will be addresses or will be answered from you, my visitors. The question is, I think it is important when you're teaching in your classes. So what strategy or strategies you are or you will be using when you're teaching in math?
For me, when I am teaching mathematics, the best way for me is interactive instruction. Through this, the students are encouraged not only to learn from me as a teacher, but from their peers as well, like brainstorming, cooperative learning, and problem solving, and I can say it is fun.
For me, the best way to teach math is the combination of two concepts. First is the mastery of the teacher about the topic. It's gonna be tested by raising a question by the students during or after the sessions. Second is the capability is knowing the capability of the students. The teachers must know or must understand that the students are not the same. They have different strengths and weaknesses. As a teacher, we must use the best teaching strategy to teach mathematics specifically and geometry. We can use objects or drawings in teaching geometry. For example, solid geometry, we can use objects or clay because it can easily be dissected during the sessions.
So for me, Ma'am Pauline, the strategies that I'm using are repetition and math games. So for repetition, by repeating and reviewing previous formulas, lessons, and information, students are able to comprehend concepts at a faster rate. So by repeating what you read, and repeating what you write, it will help you to remember or familiarize the formulas that you needed for solving the problem. That's why I can say that the student will learn at a faster rate. And for the math games, this will help me to motivate my students on learning. And also my class will not be boring. If my class will not be boring, this will make my students more focused on the class. And if they are more focused on my class, they can remember my lessons and they can solve the problems easily. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. In general, mathematics is everything. Whatever we see that surround us has something related to mathematics, particularly in geometry. Well, personally, I learned something from today's talk, and I hope you all my viewers and listeners learned something about it too. I would like to thank my guests for today's video, Mr. Balupinos, Mr. Paterno, and Mr. Rio. Thank you, sir, for your cooperations. And to all of you, my viewers, that's it for today's video. I hope you learned something and enjoyed learning. Bye-bye!